The Douglas F4D-1 Skyray. Some people generally called it the Ford in real life, but in Warthunder they call it the Windbreaker for all the wrong reasons. Most of the content creators really don't like it, similar to that brand new toothpaste that everyone has seen. But this time, 9 out of 10 dentists won't recommend it. But no one knows what type of aircraft they're dealing with. Despite never seeing combat during its entire lifetime, an aircraft made during the Cold War surely has a lot of history to tell. Underneath the bad reputation of haha funny wing rip and R60s shoved up to your face, this artifact of Cold War era surely resembles its time. An era before the intercontinental ballistic missiles, where the mutual assured destruction was not the main concern of the free world, but the nuclear weapons themselves. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bob Dickinson and welcome to Warthunder Review. Today we will be reviewing the aircraft that was directly related to the Operation Paperclip, the F4D-1 Skyray. But before we do that, let's talk about its history. The program of the F4D Skyray traces back to a German aerodynamic engineer, Alexander Martin Lippich.
And we could have probably called it also the mystery story of the Streamline, to be up to date.
As one of the pioneers of the rocket-powered aircraft, and the designer of the MA-163. He had also been interested in many other new aspects of aerodynamics, including tailless aircraft, and one design stood out: delta wings. As a part of the efforts to gain the upper hand against the Soviet Union before the end of the European theater of World War II, Lippich and his designers were a part of the Operation Paperclip to bring the German engineers to the United States. As tension between the two great powers rose and the creation of high-speed jet bombers such as the Soviet Tu-16 Badger came up, the need for a jet that could climb as fast as possible arose as well. The US Navy wanted a new jet interceptor that could climb around 15 kilometers or 15,000 feet within 5 minutes of combat alarm while putting Lippich's design into good use. The prototype XF4D was built by 1951 and flew into skies on January 23, 1951. As the tests went on, the record of top speed sea level was broken on October 3, 1953 by Lieutenant Commander James B. Verdon. The US Navy became the first user of the F4D Skyray and stationed them at San Diego as a part of the NORAD North America Defense Network against possible assaults. The US Marines and NASA also used it as well. As the demand for a multi-role jet rose, the F4D, by the time called F6 under the new Tri-Service designation, was soon withdrawn from use as a dedicated interceptor in 1964, and was replaced with McDonnell Douglas F4 Phantom. There was also a project called Notsnik, but we're not going to talk about it for now. This was a general and simple history of the Ford. I will go on this entire history and stories on a separate documentary, which I'm gonna make it in 2 years due to my military conscription. That's how big the history is. For now, let's talk about its armors and modules. Welcome to the Armor and Modular Protection Analysis, where we basically analyze the armors and modules inside of a vehicle. Today's helicopter... I'm sorry, I made too many videos on helicopters, my bad. Today's aircraft is the Douglas F4D-1 Skyray. As always, the first thing that we need to take a look at is the crew. The pilot is situated at the front of the airplane, with a singular 8mm of steel protecting its feet from head-ons. The pilot has CCIP on its cannons and rockets, and it can also acquire a G-suit modification at a rank 4. The cockpit visibility is not that great. Despite having an incredible detailed cockpit, this one might cause you some issues in simulator battles, which we will talk about later. It has 2 fuel tanks that are not self-sealing, with the possibilities of having 2 extra fuel pods, which as of this video's production are not present in the game. The Skyray has these fuel presets. Now 25 minutes of fuel might seem quite a lot of time, until you take a look at its rate of fuel consumption. This plane can be only described as a gas guzzler, and if you get shot in the fuel tank, I'm sure that the fire extinguisher will not be your good friend, since this plane does not have any fire extinguishers. The Skyray's engine is absolutely fuel hungry, And speaking of its engine, it has a Pratt & Whitney J57P8 with 4,250 kilograms of force at max thrust and 7,270 with afterburners. This makes the Skyray an absolute unit when it comes to acceleration, and overall the engine performance is very nice. Though again, the fire extinguisher is not there. And also I've never seen the Skyray having fuel starvation due to negative Gs. I mean, it does have fuel starvation, but it rarely happened to me. It has 4 traction of the control surfaces. One is for the rudder, one is for center attaching 2 others to the elevons. The 2 elevons basically do the job of elevators and ailerons. The only one that you have to be careful is the rudder. And of course you have the spars, oil cooling system, and the radar. And speaking of radar, it has AN-APQ-50. A fairly decent radar with nice scan presets and ranges. Unfortunately, it has nothing special, and it only has BVR scan and ACM mode with IFF, helping you to distinguish your enemies from your allies in air sim battles. The radar is used to identify targets, which will be totally useless in air RB, but quite nice in sim and ground RB. Now let's have a look at its main armaments. The main armament of the Skyray is the Colt Mark 12 20mm cannons. Now these cannons on the Skyray have pros and cons. They're incredibly punchy, have a nice variety of builds, including ground targets, air targets, default, universal, and stealth. And now the downside of these guns. They're a bit on the slow side and their velocity is a bit low. You have a limited amount of rounds per gun, but your guns are divided by 2, so you can conserve more ammo. And of course, your guns are mounted on the wings instead of the middle nose. This makes it into an awkward situation as most of the airplanes at this BR have their guns installed on the nose of the aircraft, such as MiG-17, F9 Cougar, hell, even its closely related brother, the F3H Demon, has it at its center, and it has a lot more ammo than the Skyray. But it does not really matter to me, and I generally got used to it pretty easily, since I just basically can't aim with anything at all. Now let's have a look at these suspended armaments, with the first one being the AIM-9B Sidewinder, installed on 4 outer and inner pods. The AIM-9B is nothing special. Standard air-to-air missiles with 10G pull and a very limited gimbal. This one is fairly nice against those who are cruising and not looking at their back. I would highly recommend you to fire them at 1.5 kilometers or lower. It's very nice to have 4 of them on the Skyray, but please do not expect a lot from these missiles. Next up is the FFAR Mighty Mouse rockets, both Aero 6 and Aero 7 pods installed on all pods that are available to the Skyray. These rockets are nice to have on your Skyray. The Aero 6 can have 7 rockets per pod, while the Aero 7 has 19 of them. The Mighty Mouse rockets are nice for ground attacks. They have decent penetration and explosive mass, and their range is nice. This, alongside the fact that you got CCIP to aim rockets properly, makes the experience much better. You can use them for ground attacks if you want, but I personally use them as flares against those who wish to throw an AIM-9L or any top-tier missile at me. For this action, all you need to do is to cut your afterburner and deploy several rockets while turning. It may not work, but it's better than having no flares. The quantity of these rockets are high as well, so you can use them as literally rounds against your enemies. But do it just in case if you ran out of ammo. And I just wanted to gloss over some armaments that might come in the future for the Skyray, which include the early version of the AIM-7 Sparrow, and one missile that shocked me to my core when I saw it. The Air 2 Genie. The Air 2 Genie was a nuclear air-to-air rocket that was only deployed once, and it was on an F-89, famous for Ground Zero Population 5 incident. The Air 2 Genie was a rocket that had a 2-kiloton nuclear warhead, being able to destroy bombs within a 300-meter radius. This was not the only Cold War project that the Skyray was involved. By the way, did you know that the Skyray was also involved in the space race? I've never seen anybody talk about this project, because it was only tested on the F4D Skyray. Even though it was a total failure, this is an interesting piece of history, which one day deserves its own video. The project was called Natsnik. The Skyray was capable enough to launch a satellite into orbit. Anyways, where are we? Oh yeah, let's talk about its flight performance. When it comes to its flight performance, it's nothing like you've seen before. As you have probably noticed this already, this aircraft is known for its delta wing design, but it's neither a delta wing nor a flying wing. The Skyray is something in between. The aircraft accelerates pretty well, and if you're down tiered, you can notice this pretty well. Maybe the F-104s or Aviate Harriers might be better than you, but overall the acceleration is fairly nice. It has 2 combat flaps that are close to the fuselage and have 2 combat and landing presets. And the interesting thing about these flaps is that they almost never get destroyed once you deploy them in high speeds. Alright, so post-editing Bob Dickinson here, I almost forgot about this glitch that if you actually deploy your combat flaps in high speeds like 950 kilometers or 1150, the aircraft will immediately do a nosedive and you just basically cannot do anything about it. I don't know why, maybe the elevons are locked or something, but my solution to that was just simply switch to full controls immediately, switch your flaps to raised, then go back to mouse aim. This is how I basically avoided it in realistic battles. You have a tricycle landing gear designed with a tail hook and a tiny landing gear, preventing a tail strike. This will be useful for emergency landings, which we will talk about it later. When you deploy your combat flaps and you're above 200 kilometers per hour, you can take off from the airfield, though taking off from 300 kilometers of speed is highly recommended. Please remember that there is no visual difference between the combat flaps and the closed flaps. And since these flaps never break, this will result in high G pulls in high speeds, resulting in terrible wing rips that can ruin your gaming experience, so watch out for that. The Skyray has an incredible acceleration for its battle rating, and can climb altitudes pretty easily, and without any kind of problems. One good thing about the F4D Skyray is the fact that this aircraft is very good at turning and pulling AOA, but unfortunately since it's a delta wing looking design, it is famous for losing a lot of energy in one turn. And you really thought that was bad? The Skyray is incredibly wide and looks like a target practice from top. I always thought that the Skyray is a beautiful princess. And of course my friend Flogger thinks that it looks like a giant moth. Hey, Flogger, you know what? Funny pencil. If you have ever seen YouTubers make a video on this aircraft, or at least you play it yourself, you will realize that the F4D-1 Skyray has one major issue. It rips wings quite frequently. Now I was wondering what was happening during this time. What was the issue of Skyray ripping wings in the most usual tasks you could have possibly give to him? And so I went on a test drive and played it on sim controls, and pulled the flight stick as high as possible, and I didn't have a problem. Then I tried to use the same thing, but I also used the rudder and the elevons to roll. And it was in that time when I realized 2 issues. The problem is not the Skyray. The problem is Warthunder's instructor and my playstyle. You see, sometimes when an aircraft tries to turn, the instructor will push the aircraft to its limits by using its rudder and rudder kicking the aircraft in order to make it roll faster. This applies to negative and positive G. And the way I played most of these aircraft was that the game always pushed the aircraft to its limits, and since the Skyray is a little bit sensitive, it caused a lot of wing rips. So how do we turn with the Skyray? It is fairly simple. Before you turn, you always have to roll to your desired direction and pull your flight stick. This prevents the instructor to use the rudder and ruin your day for another 15,000 silver lines. Thank God they fixed the SL repair cost. Now you might ask this simple question. Okay Bob, I did it on the test drive and the aircraft is not turning good at all. Did you just lie to me? What have I done to you, man? I'm filing a divorce, did you? No, it has a simple answer. The Skyray compresses really hard at 950 km speeds and higher. If you really want to, you can also use your air brakes to lose a lot of speeds really quick. By the way, did I mention that the air brakes on this aircraft is insane? You have 4 surfaces that assist you to brake really fast. You can turn really well, for only 1 turn of course. You can also make a turn faster by using your flaps, though you have to deploy them in less than 600 to 650 kilometers in order to prevent another wing rip. Please note that this results in higher AOA and even more rapid speed loss. If you actually control the Skyray like this, I'm pretty sure that you will have a somewhat better experience. I've seen a lot of YouTubers recommending to remove these boosters. That is also an option, but let me tell you something, I didn't grind that shit for nothing. So I personally like to have it on my Skyray all the time, because as I've said, the Skyray has no problems in air simulator battles, which is the game mode that we will talk about later. When it comes to landing the Skyray, it is insanely good at what it's doing. There's a simple trick that I'm going to show you on how to land the Skyray really well. It's not professional, but if you want an emergency landing, the Skyray has no problems to do that. When you approach the airfield, set your flaps to landing and deploy your landing gear. Please remember that the landing gears will break at 430 kilometers and higher, depending on the map. Once you approach the airfield, deploy your air brakes and control your engine throttle. Once you had a touchdown, you have two choices. Either land normally, like any other plane should, or simply yank your rudder to left or right to break the landing gears. And simply land at 300 km per hour while your rear frame, your nose cone, and the rudder scream in agony. Remember the landing gear that I told you before? Yeah, it's attached to the main frame, meaning that if you break all your landing gears, this one will stay intact no matter how hard you slam it. Since it's indestructible and it's still deployed, this gear elevates the airframe and only allows the nose and one side of the wing to touch the ground. As long as you don't crash, you're pretty safe, though you shouldn't use your guns to brake faster in this situation, as the splash will destroy your pilot. Trust me, I tried it in sim. It was not a great experience, and I lost, what, 20,000 SL repair costs in that time? Jesus Christ. Overall, I would like to personally give this Skyray a 6 out of 10 in air realistic battles. Now let's get on with the air simulator battles. Welcome to Air Simulator Battles, where the matchmaking battle rating rotation allows you to have experience in both up tier and down tier. One thing that I want to say from the beginning of this section of the video is that the Skyray has several advantages and disadvantages compared to the other aircrafts. For one, it never does any kind of accelerated stalls, or never stalls in general. And for two, the Skyray almost never rips wings if you know how to play it. The Skyray has an incredible radar. Even though it has a lot of ground clutter, the IFF actually assists you on identifying friends and foes. And of course, that one disadvantage being the fuel usage. There are no fuel pods for the Skyray in Warthunder, so don't go on full afterburner all the time, until Gaijin decides to add the fuel pods for the Skyray. There are several objectives in simulator battles that I found this aircraft to be the most useful in. Destroying the enemy bombers and attackers will be your favorite part of the simulator battles. All of your 4 missiles will be useful in this objective, and if you want to be conservative on your ammo, you can also divide your gun usage by splitting them in half. Honestly, this is the most fun part I had during my sim session because the Skyray has a very nice flight model and can stabilize itself pretty well when you're aiming. And it does not flop up and down every time you touch the flight stick like the goddamn F-104 Starfighter, goddammit man! The Skyray is also used for destroying the enemy surveillance aircraft. If you position yourself well, you can launch the A9B Sidewinder at it or you can engage it with guns. The Skyray is a high altitude bomber interceptor, so it does not have any problems engaging the surveillance aircraft in high altitude. Next objective is to destroy enemy bases. The Skyray has 6 pods of Mighty Mouse rockets. These rockets are quite nice, but for destroying bases, it's a little bit painful, as the Mighty Mouse rockets are not strong enough to destroy a single base. Also, please watch out for the enemy SPAAs covering the bases. Also, I'm not sure about the rest of the objectives, such as ground targets, because the anti-air on those convoys and enemy assaults and defenses are insanely accurate and can annihilate you if you even approach them indirectly. And finally, the real dogfighting. I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on dogfighting in sim battles, but every time I attempted to do so, I had my guns on the enemy jets most of the time. Though remember, maintaining your energy and the amount of turns you must have is extremely crucial for your survival. I don't know how to describe it because my aiming is totally trash in this game mode, despite the Skyray's cockpit having an incredibly open visibility at the front, but extremely limited on top and behind. This is what I would like to call skill issue. Now let's go to the ground simulator battles. This game mode is incredibly fun to play if you're a K-50 or a Chinese helicopter. If you want to play the Skyray in ground sim battles, forget about engaging enemy ground units and go directly for aerial targets, such as the, oh god, the terrifying MiG-29 and F-16? Does Taiwan have F-16? I don't know, I don't care. And of course, the enemy helicopters. Real meat and potatoes. Turn off your radar at the start of the battle, and then approach the enemy helipad 90 degrees or even higher angles outside of their view range. Once you have enough distance, turn around and engage with guns. Please do not use sidewinders or rockets, as the missile approach warning system will definitely make the K-50 players poop their pants. And they'll probably do a Cobra maneuver or something, they crash, you're not gonna get the kill. Just use guns, come on. Also, please remember that you have limited amount of ammo. The McDonnell Douglas F4D-1 Skyray is a vehicle that has a special place in my heart. It was the first vehicle that I played in simulator battles, and it was the first rank 6 jet I got, and it introduced me to a whole different world. In Warthunder, I'm generally not a good player at looking at characteristics of different aircrafts, specifically at higher BRs, but the Skyray is a familiar face to me. the one that I grinded the entire US tech tree with, despite not being a premium vehicle. I also made a skin for the Skyray. If you really want to, you can also check that out. You can purchase this vehicle on Gaijin Market for a cheap price because neither YouTubers nor Gaijin give a single crap about this poor bastard. Now, would I recommend you to get the Douglas F4D-1 Skyray? I'll be honest, it is pretty cheap and you can play it really well if you're experienced enough. Despite the Skyray being on the sussy side of the air realistic battles, it was one of the best planes I've played in air sim. So yeah, sure, why not? You can buy it. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Bob Dickinson, signing out.